Hello and welcome to Audionautic. Today we are taking a look at the new Behringer soft synth Vintage, which is technically free. And I was told by Curtis to stress the technically. So Curtis, why are you making me say this?
Well, it's a free VST, but upon release, Behringer have gone, hey, this synth is worth about $100, but we're going to give it to you for free, which is such a Behringer move. It's just, I find it quite funny in that regard. So we're going to break it down. We're having a look at it. We're going to go through the UI, how it works. And also we're going to be going through some of the sounds, some of the presets, and how to get into a bit of sound design. It's a cool episode, so we can check it out. So yeah, they released it. Behringer's, it's a soft synth, and it's modeled on classic 70s, like the Prophet, for example, and the Oberheim, that kind of thing. So, and they said, yeah,
Is it
just have it
polyphonic?
free. Yes, it is polyphonic.
Yes.
And yes, it's very much meant to emulate those kind of sounds. So it's very basic. We'll get into it. I'll take you through the UI later after we've got a small sound demo. But yeah, it's interesting. It's noteworthy. It's like Behringer are always talkable, if we put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, they've got some good stuff and it's affordable. This one being free, that's a nice addition. So why don't we take a listen to it? You recorded a little sound demo, correct? So we can give a listen, hear what it sounds like, and then we'll walk through the UI. And I want to hear from Jonathan about it too after when he hears it, because I was blown away by Jonathan's production. And had he not wanted to talk about story in this episode, I wanted to talk production, but he wanted to do story. So so we'll do story, but if there's some time, I might just try to get a little bit of the drum production out of him, because I really want to know that. But Curtis, do you want me to play the video or do you have it on your end?
I've got it here. We're all ready. It's 3 or 4 minutes. We'll see you on the other side.
All right.
So, Behringer Vintage. They teased it, they brought it out, they took it away again, and finally it's here. I say finally as if it's anticipated. And who knows? We're going to find out. Free plugin, though they say it is worth $99, which is an interesting way. It's like, we'll give it to you for free, but it's worth $99. It's Behringer. What else do you expect, So yeah, we're talking about the show. So I'm just going to give you a taste of what the sounds are, essentially. So I'm just going to go through some of the presets and we can kind of decide what we want to go through. There's a healthy amount of presets. Generally speaking, they're okay. Nothing special. There's room for manipulation and there's room for interpretation, but it's fine. Let's go through some. El Jupiter, which is any guesses what that's going to be. Standard. It's a good pad. It's a nice pad. KB. Retro Reverie. Ooh. Way too high. Sound. It's a sound. Lead. Pringle lead. Nebula spikes. Sure, it's fine. Middle lander. Looks like a plot. Too high. I was wrong. What's this guy doing? VCO. That's quite interesting. I quite like that. It's quite nice. It's quite enchanted. It's like very early. So episodes and solos kind of Curtis. In Jergery we trust. Ooh, it's kind of weird. There's no release though. It's fine. Interesting, classic, kind of vintage sound. Let's try this one. Montezuma Gates. Never heard that before. It's okay. Norbert's Blade. There you have it. What do you think?
What do you think? That's a good question, Curtis. It looks like the chat has quite a few thoughts on it. Survey Jam says Casio cheap. Mike in the earlier bit said so far fairly underwhelming. Thomas appreciates your jamming, Curtis. Let's see what else we've got. Thomas says definitely underwhelming in terms of effects. Will have to listen in my own DAW to judge the raw sound. Yeah, one clarification: we are streaming over the internet, so there's compression and artifacting and all that. So the sound isn't fully what it would be. I thought it sounded interesting. There were some good sounds. I really like that first. I mean, you know me, I hear a really lush pad and I'm sold. But I really like that Jupiter pad at the start. That one was pretty good. Some of them were a little it's a sound as Curtis said, and I've put into text just so we have that. That should be a shirt, I think. It's a sound. But yeah, let us know what you think. Bendu says, I like simple sounds. I feel like even for free, I have these bases covered. Yeah. I mean, it's free. So yeah, I do want to go. Where was it? Because this one did not surprise me in the least, but not the Curtis part. Curtis said, definitely one for learning the basics of sound design and a toe dip into the classic sounds, which I'm sure it sounds like is your take on the synth. But Mike says, to be honest, I'd advocate Ableton Drift for that. Of course you would.
No surprise.
But yeah, I mean, that's not a surprise coming from Mike. He loves his Ableton. So yeah. Jonathan, what's your take on this? So it's free. There's that. But I'm curious. I don't know much about your production. I'm curious to hear some. But is this something you would grab?
I think the price is a plus factor in terms of the sounds. Then, yeah, some people have said it's quite cheap sounding. It's quite thin in a way. But again, probably would need to put it through a decent sound system to see what it actually sounds like. The interface for me looks quite interesting because it looks like it's very much based on an Ableton in Ableton stock synth style. Certainly with a lot of the interface. So I don't know whether that's been copied from Ableton. Yeah, I suppose it'd probably need a test run, but wouldn't be used that often because it does sound a bit too thin for my liking.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. And Curtis, you've been playing with it. What's your take on it?
I think there's room for fun. I think this is a box for fun. I think the presets are very thin and they are on there. There's only two VCOs, only two oscillators on there. And so there isn't much to play with. But I think the fun of that is then playing around with what you can do. How can you texturize it? How can you manipulate it? It's another form of doing that. Now you might argue, why not just then use something like Vital? Why not use something like Serum? But we're always talking about limitations here. We're always talking about things that can do creativity from that regard. And this is a limitation. It is also standalone. So, which is interesting. So it is a standalone app and it can go in a computer and you don't have to run it through any DAW. So you could, in theory, use it as a soft synth live or something like that. I didn't put that in the video because I forgot and it only just occurred to me while everyone was talking. But
that's why we're live. So you can add in, you can embellish.
Exactly. I do. Yes, I hear what the people are saying and I agree with that in one section of it. I downloaded it for the show and I'm going to live stream with it later just to play around and see if there's anything that we can really do and get under the hood. But I do think that there is a toe dip there towards the classic sounds, which if you're new to making sounds, or if you're new to this game, I think that's really nice. It's free. You might as well in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I was gonna say, even if there's one sound or one sort of way you can use it in terms of making your own preset or something with it, just given what it offers and things like that, it's free, so it doesn't hurt to just grab it. Unless he's talking about Ableton, it sounds like we convinced Thomas, because I know he uses Ableton, so it's already installed, but Thomas says installed as we speak. So yeah, I mean, it's free. You're not really losing anything getting it other than maybe time if you're going to take the time to learn it and you don't need to or something. But yeah, it's there. So Curtis, I know you've got it ready. Do you want to walk us through real quick just the UI of the synth if anybody does download it, wants to see what's what with it?
Yeah, sure. And I think I think once we understand the UI and you can see where it's coming from, you kind of see where I'm coming from in terms of like the educational aspect of it and where you can
Mhm.
see. Um,
Sure.
instantly you bring it up, and I think of Survey Channel's DeepMind for
I would
start.
say
Uh,
the screen reminds me of DeepMind, and then I was like, oh, that is Behringer's synth, isn't it?
Exactly. And it's incredibly simple. And it's, as you can see, I can't play sound right now because I can't route sound through StreamYard and be on the show. I don't have a fancy Mac yet, but as you can see, it's incredibly easy, incredibly kind of simple with what it can do. You've got your VCO1 and you've got your VCO2, and then those are connected to VCF1 and VCF2. So you can see quite instantly you've got that. You've got that workflow coming through there. Those can then be affected by LFO1 and LFO2. You can't move those around. They are linked to those VCOs. And so this whole thing teaches you quite nicely about sound design and about kind of how to manipulate sound waves, which I kind of like in that regard. It's free, it's cheap. As a teaching tool, I think it'd be a really good thing to kind of keep through. Now, I know not everyone here is I don't know, a lot of people here are really down on their synthesis and stuff, but for someone who's learning the basics of how to change and alter sounds from the beginning, this is a really good way of doing it in that regard. And it's not so overwhelming like Serum or Vital in that regard. It gives you two VCOs, two VCFs. You got the VCAs over here. You can pan, you can level, and that kind of thing. You got a vibrato and unison over on the right hand side. Over here
Really
on the
quickly, Curtis, we got a question from Smiling Airs about the envelopes. Yes, mouse to adjust envelopes, can't see a knob.
are you talking about me personally or on the oh here, sorry.
I think
Oh here
he
you
means
mean.
in reference to the synth. Yeah. Those
Yeah, so
envelopes
you
are
can
those, yeah, you have to adjust it from that, or is there a knob? I mean, I'm sure you can MIDI CC it probably to a hardware knob.
you can MIDI CC it, but yes, you can either do it two ways. You can either come to your
Uh,
attack decay sustain over here, move it with your mouse, or you can move it with the blocks here. It's kind of finicky if you do it this way. It's not the easiest way to do it, but yeah, it is what it is in that regard. And then yeah, you can move your attack that way, and things correspond in that regard. Yeah, all through the mouse.
are there any built-in effects?
No, there are not any built-in effects in that regard.
Okay.
This is what you get, and this is what you
Not a
have in
big
front
deal,
of you.
just curious. Yeah.
Mm. So there is room for you to like in Ableton, for example. There is room in Ableton to kind of come on through and move configure. So for example, if you wanted to create if you wanted to configure, say your VCF, you come into configure. This is not an Ableton tutorial, but you can affect it that way if you wanted to. But that would all be outside of Ableton. One thing I did notice when I was playing around with it is it comes out kind of quiet. Um, I had to put a utility and boost it by 5 dB to get any proper sound for that video that I made. So that is one thing to bear in mind. It's quite a quiet synthesizer, but then again, this is modeled on a synthesizer before the loudness wars came through. So maybe that's just normal back then. I think you're muted, Sunwarper, or is it just me? I think Sunwarper. I think you're muted.
Interesting. Somehow we all got muted.
Hey.
What I was saying was, Thomas says no effects like a real old school synth, what you were saying. But to that point, I was asking because I know a lot of these vintage synth recreations, typically like I'm thinking Cherry Audio, they usually have a couple. I don't think it matters. You're working in a DAW. typically, so you've got a ton of effects. But if you are using it in standalone, having a little reverb or delay would always be nice. But I mean, it's not a deal breaker. Smiling Air says needs a preamp. You were saying it was quiet, maybe so. Is there a volume or gain knob? I wasn't looking. I think I might have missed it. But
There is a volume and a gain knob that you can adjust the levels on a master and of the VCOs independently. But even when I boosted to the max, it was coming in at like minus 18, which could be fine. But if you're using it alone, then maybe you need something a bit more.
Interesting. Mike asks if it's advertised itself as a vintage in quote synth. Can the VCOs be detuned, synced? Do you have the drift-like settings?
Yes, you have detune. If I bring this back up, we can see. So if I do
While
my
you do
entire
that, I
screen,
just want to share. Survey Channel says boost that baby.
so happy survey channels here today. Yes, you can. You've got the VCOs here. You can detune them down here. You got your octave here. You can choose your semitones. You can choose your fine tune, and then where they're routed to, VCF1 or VCF2.
Cool. Is there a sync? That was the other thing he asked. For oscillators, I think he's asking.
In what sync? In what sense? Sorry.
I think can't you sync on some synths? You can sync oscillators and things like that. Is there? Do you see any sync?
To the beat, you mean? Yeah, in that regard, yes. So you can do it to the beat inside your DAW if you choose to. You can do it to the hertz if you wanted to, but yeah, you can do that.
He might be talking pitch, like on the Prophet. You can sync the two oscillators. Yeah, the exact hard sync oscillators. You can sync the two oscillator. Yeah, I don't know if there's a sync button, but yeah.
No, not in this one, sadly.
Okay. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's there, and I mean it's there. I think, coming from an educational perspective, I would definitely get everyone to install this and have the basics of it. That's me coming from an educational perspective, at least. But the limitation as well, I think, what sticks it for me.
Yeah, I mean, it seems very approachable, right? Like it's all right there, just on the front end. There's a couple of different changes to the screen and things like that, but that is cool. I do agree, though, similar to what like Mike was saying earlier, but some stock synths in whatever DAW have very similar things. But I mean, this is free, so you can grab it even if you don't have a DAW because it's standalone. So yeah.
I think that's fair. I mean, if you look at some other ones, for example, like if you look at Operator, you bring that in, you do have a similar kind of vibe coming through, right?
Yeah.
I do feel on the face of it as well. That's not as, I get it. I get Operator, for example, because it's nice, it's there, it's easy, and it works. But I also love Ableton, and I've been in Ableton for a long time, and that makes sense to me. That workflow makes sense to me. But this, as you might always say it, Sunwarper, it's very grey, and it's just not very attractive. And it's, for anyone coming to it for the first time, it's just there, and it's all numbers, and it's words, and it's all just kind of all over the place. If you come back to if you come back to Vintage, it looks nice. It looks where it's at, which for someone getting into this kind of deal, that could make all the difference. If you're a visual learner, if you're a visual human, that could be really good.
We've got an Ableton stock synth battle waging in the comments. So first of all, let me just get to Survey Channel. He says, wish Behringer built-in compatible hardware mappings when using this. Would be nice to natively control it with the DeepMind. That would be cool. Very much so. So here's what we've got. Mike says, I would reach for drift over operator. Then
yeah.
Pendu says, pull up analog. And Mike says, analog is drift's ugly cousin. So I don't know if you want to just quickly show those just so we can see it, if that's cool, before we move on to Jonathan. But yeah.
Let me pull drift in. So this is drift. Hang on, let me bring up again, I'll share screen. Give me a sec. If I bring this up. So this is, can you see down the bottom? I can't make.
I was going to share it. Sorry. There we go.
Yeah. So yeah, this is drift here, which again, okay, is a little bit more colorful, a little bit more dynamic. Yes, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. And wavetable was the other one, right? Was that what Bendu said?
Analog, I think.
Analog. Sorry, apologies.
And Thomas threw his hat in the ring too. I will choose sampler any day over those.
Get that. I mean, analog, right? This is analog. And analog is fine and it's cool. But look, I mean, that anyone coming to this, or anyone coming to Ableton for the first time, or anyone coming to any DAW for the first time is going to look at this and go, what the hell am I doing here? Where do I begin? If you are unaware of things, and if you're unaware of things like the difference of the waveforms, for example, or how to detune, or if you don't know anything about ADSR, this is a massive barrier to entry right here. They get a bit better with things like wavetable, for example. That's a bit more visually impulsive and stuff. Or if you're looking at drift, yes, it's a little bit better. I don't think though that you are going to get much better. Have I got rid of it now? I have got rid of it now, but I don't
Load
think
it back up, man.
I'll get it back up. It's the beauty of this kind of thing. I do think that if you are going to have vintage, something like vintage, I'll give it a second. There we go. It is just a little bit more there. It's a little bit closer to monkey see, monkey do, monkey turn knob, thing change, and learn. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think just to clarify, Bendy was saying it's laid out the same way with regard to analog. But yeah, I hear what you mean. I mean, I think it depends largely on what you're used to. If you're using Ableton and all that type of stuff, I do agree though. This is laid out like a hardware synth. I mean, it looks like a hardware synth. So if you're coming from hardware or something like that, it's kind of like a one-to-one, similar to like if you were to grab Repro or something like that. You know, things like that. But yeah, I mean, it really just depends what you need and all that. Jonathan, do you have anything else you want to add? Are you going to grab this synth?
Yeah, I probably will download it. Like I said, just because it's free, and yeah, I suppose with the fact that it's got limitations as well, you can't just do everything you actually want to. I think it could be quite creative with the fact that you've got limitations in the synth where you're forced to compromise with how you work a synth, and yeah, that could create some interesting effects. But yeah, like Thomas said, you probably would have to put the utility up to plus 20 dB though, in order to get anything out of it by the sound of it. But yeah, it could be interesting.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to join us live and have your opinions and your takes heard, as you've seen, we go over all of the chats that we get in our live streams. Join us every Wednesday for ADSN Live right here on YouTube.
For sure. We go live at 7 p.m. UTC, 11 a.m. Pacific, and we're there every week. All the latest news, all the latest gear, and the stuff that we're talking about in the independent musicians world. Come and have a look.
Yeah, and if you still can't get enough, head to the Discord. It's free for all. The link is in the description. We talk all of this kind of stuff all day, all night. We're international, so we've got all different kinds of time zones, so you can always find somebody there to talk with. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.